Thanks a lot, Vinnie, for having us here. And we want to spend roughly 20 minutes to talk with you about SAP for public sector. I'm Ulrike Kleifeld. I'm based in our headquarters in Walldorf, Germany, and I lead the strategy for our global public services business. And with me is Chris Atkins. Chris, please introduce yourself quickly.
Hello, Vinnie. Nice to see you again. I'm Chris Atkins. I'm our VP for Digital Government Transformation in our Global Public Sector team. And it's a pleasure to be with my colleague Ulrike today to talk to you about public sector.
I'm looking forward to this. Public sector is one of those, doesn't get much exposure in the software world. So especially the whole digital aspect. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you for joining me this morning.
And before we go so we're planning to talk with you about the trends and the challenges that we see in public sector these days, how we address them and how we provide value. We also brought some customer examples, and finally talk with you about our vision or our North Star, the intelligent, resilient, and sustainable government. And before we do that, let's quickly remind everyone who listens later to this, please make any buying decision on the then current functionality, the roadmap that we publish, and make sure you have the latest information on that. So public sector. Public sector is basically providing services, protecting the population, the environment, and also helping the economy to prosper. In recent times, we have seen not only in the pandemic that there are increasing challenges. The pandemic actually led to an acceleration in digitization, and it made obvious to everyone that public sector very often is still lagging behind. Now that we come out of the pandemic, we realize there is a war in Ukraine, the geopolitical tensions are increasing worldwide. We have economic burdens still in the recovery from the pandemic, but also an increasing energy crisis that just raises all these challenges for government, and climate change is now getting more and more obvious in its impact on our everyday life. So instead of having just one crisis every now and then, we realize there are disruptions, and these are coming in waves. And governments need to get adjusted to that this is the new normal. On the other hand, they are challenged by a public who does not really trust government to get all these things done that they need to do, and that they are still really able to stay on top.
Ulrike, I was going to ask you the previous slide. I'm glad you were bringing this up, because this seems to be an issue in many parts of the world.
Absolutely. So one way or the other, we see that some are more impacted by economic or social changes. But what we really see, I think it was the only one, there's only one exception, and that is Sweden. But usually people trust their neighbors and friends more than they do the government. So this is the challenge that government actually faces. And we can actually help them to also regain that trust. What do they?
Just a little nuance there. Is it they don't trust government or don't trust politicians, or both?
They don't trust politicians, maybe on that general, they don't know what to do. But they also don't have the confidence that government is able to be so agile and foresighted as it ideally would be. So it's not so much a personal estimate. It's more like this general perception: government is too slow, too heavyweight, not innovative enough. Yes. And we know all that there are good reasons for that, because they are spending our taxpayers' money, so they should be risk averse. But on the other hand side, the world is turning faster and faster, and we need to help them actually also accelerate in what they do and use their resources much better. So what we think how this can be done. First and foremost, you need to start with actually bringing your people into a stronger empowerment and in what we call the digital mindset, meaning an understanding of what does it mean to digitize. And digitization is more than replicating the historic processes, the physical processes in a digital world. Instead, governments actually need to understand that data can be replicated and used and exchanged and exploited, understood to make more informed decisions. Also, the operations of IT systems consumes quite a lot of resources. So instead of building them from scratch and in-house, what we still see very often, it would be much more beneficial to apply a standardization process across the whole of government and use that on a platform in the cloud. So to offload standard IT operations into and collaborate on that. This then will also help to move from disconnected processes into much more end-to-end digitized ways of operating and making decisions, and from siloed data sources into a single source of truth that really helps to gain the right insights for well-informed decisions and even be able to predict what is coming upon you.
Ulrike, I'm glad you have that in the cloud statement there. I'm looking forward to hearing some of those examples because government has been a laggard in cloud adoption, would you say?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that and picked that out, because we're totally aware that governments are reluctant to also move into the cloud because they're concerned about the nation's digital sovereignty, the nation's security, the protection of data. So you cannot just come with a plain vanilla industry standard cloud offering. You need to elevate that, and we also have that in our portfolio and are totally aware of these higher requirements that governments are now phrasing more and more. So what do we mean when we say like end-to-end digitization? And I've brought an example from service delivery. Usually what we see very often is common standard. You can apply for certain services online. But then what happens behind the scenes is that there's a lot of manual consolidation of facts, of data, of systems, just to make the right decision. And it takes much longer to come to a decision and much more manual effort than it is, for example, if you do banking or online shopping. And people realize that. So they realize that they would not get the decision immediately. If we combine front office and back office much better and much closer and really are able to connect these different systems and combine information out of them, we would actually have much better data quality already in the request, because we can pre-populate it, we can do data checks, plausibility checks, and then route it through to and backend. And in the backend, we can use intelligent technologies like artificial intelligence or robot process automation across different IT systems and help actually make those decisions automated in an automated manner that can be pretty straightforward and only raise to human attention those cases that are much more complex. And with that, we would also be able to execute, make the decision, communicate it much faster, and also automate the execution, get it much more reliable. So that is what we mean when we say end-to-end digitization. So
yeah.
If we now go a bit more in detail into our portfolio, let me hand over to Chris and talk about that.
Thank you, Ulrike. And Vinnie, when we think about how we help our customers address the trends that Ulrike covered and discussed, we think about their end-to-end business model for how they deliver value to their citizens. We call this the value chain, and it enables us to address our customers' unique requirements in their unique industry. And so for government, they always begin with policy and planning. they have to determine how to structure a program with tangible outcomes and then budget public funds for personnel and other expenses in order to attempt to achieve those outcomes. Then they have to take that planned budget and execute on it with grants to departments and agencies, along with a financial management system that supports departmental level execution. And then finally, last but not least, government has to turn all those very cold financial numbers in the finance system into actual services to citizens. And this could range in the public sector from social service application processing to citizen and stakeholder experience, and even enabling citizens to pay their taxes that support all of these public services. And then after all this is over and the service is delivered, the leading governments will report on the outcomes that they achieved and compare those to the outcomes that were originally predicted in the policy and planning process, and then make adjustments to policy and planning as needed. And that creates a really nice feedback loop for the entire process. So this is a simplified value chain that we see for our public sector customers. And this guides, Vinnie, our strategy for them and our portfolio strategy and execution as well.
Chris, two things. I'm really pleased to see a lot of the government offerings that go on at the front part that you talked about, the fund planning, the fund accounting,
Yes.
the back office, right? When it comes
Yeah.
to citizen interface, very few of them will talk about permitting and collection. What citizens really need to deal with government. Very few of them offer those systems. So I'm glad you're covering the whole thing. The other thing, your feedback loop. One of my favorite examples of that is I wrote a case study on the National Hurricane Center a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of every year, they actually do an audit of how good were their forecasts. And the hurricane track that they predicted versus the actual track and so on. Very, very honest appraisal of their performance. I mean, I don't see too many government agencies do that, but I'm glad at least you're encouraging them to do that.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, Ulrike talked about trust, and to the point you just made, there's been research in the US that suggests that a lot of what citizens, their trust level in government kind of directly correlates, Vinnie, to the quality and the frequency of the services that are delivered to them. It's not necessarily so much about what we think about the latest politician, but how we perceive government meeting our needs when we interact with government. And so that citizen orientation and the program and service part of the value chain is critical for building that trust, for sure. And we do have a few customer examples that we can talk to. The third one, Vinnie, will be in the area of direct, program and service citizen interaction. But we picked examples from each of the areas, and so I want to consider how these three customers really adopted an innovation mindset and agility in the cloud to deliver more value for their citizens along the value chain. So if we start first with policy and planning, I want to talk about the Serbian Ministry of Finance for a second. A significant part of the Serbian government's expenditure is spent on HR, or human resources. So they have to really tightly and carefully control their human resource expenditure, and it's key for them to provide services in an effective and efficient manner. And this is true for the governments that I worked in, and then all the government clients that I've worked with at SAP. So this is a very common challenge. And they had to harmonize their HR data across their government sectors to allow for the proper analyzing and planning of their workforce, and then predict critical elements for their workforce-related budget planning and preparation. So that was the challenge. So in order to deliver on these policy and planning goals, they created a government-wide cloud-based end-to-end integrated solution that included analytics, planning, and budgeting of all of their workforce-related expenditures across all their departments and agencies. And they were able to achieve a lot more accurate budget projections based on reliable data now. And in terms of the actual analytical and planning work, they significantly reduced time for preparation of budget versions and budget simulations based on the workforce data. And probably my favorite anecdote from this customer example, Vinnie, is they achieved an Excel-less, fully integrated HR budget preparation process.
Chris, was success factors part of this, or was it more of your other planning tools and budgeting tools?
I believe it was our other budgeting and planning tools as well. I do think success factors was a part of this, but certainly tapping into that HR data. And then Vinnie, the other cool thing about this is they created a mobile friendly solution to take advantage of extensions and integrations. Extension is often I call it the stepchild of application development and platform. It's literally extending what you've done into different settings via mobile applications, which is critical, for user adoption today. So that was policy and planning. If we go to the public finance management part, I want to talk about State of Arkansas. State of Arkansas, a longtime SAP customer here in the U.S., and they had a challenge around accounting and reporting back to the federal government on how they were using federal grant money. And like most governments, they have multiple aging systems that were used to perform detailed cost allocations for grants and reporting back to their sponsors. They had a custom written system that crashed and was inoperative quite often, leaving them with a manual process that was very expensive, very time consuming, and exposed a lot of risk in their data entry and data management. And they couldn't produce timely financial reports on that manual system back to the federal government, which meant they were literally risking their future funding from the federal government that supported a lot of their salaries in critical program and service areas. So they implemented.
It's the opposite of the Excel-less environment you talked about.
Exactly. That they were swimming in Excel and manual data. Very, very, very well put. So they built with our public cloud ERP and our BTP, our business technology platform, which I'll talk about more in a minute, solutions. They were able to build a much more data-driven solution for these accounting processes and reporting. And listen to some of these metrics. They were able to achieve a 95% reduction in accounting processes from a time perspective, going from 4 weeks to 1 click for many of their processes, a 91% reduction in cost allocation process from 6 months to 10 days. And yes, you heard this right, a 1,150% improvement in creating their budget reports. What used to take days now took them minutes. And for the first time ever, they were able to submit their federal quarterly reports on time. And so, we like to think the back office can be very boring, and it certainly can be. I've worked in the back office in government. There's a lot of processes that are the same every day, but there's also a lot of processes that are different. And when you get into planning and how to report, that can look different, and you need technology tools to do that. And I just think it's a great example of using technology against a core environment to improve your processes.
You could write a book on all the processes you eliminated.
Exactly. I mean, this one, yeah, it's some of the best outcomes I've seen, from one of our customers with a project like this. And then last but not least, and this gets into the program and service area, is City of Hamburg. And they were able to do a COVID-19 cultural aid application and payment process with us. And I mean, we all know the stories, and it was difficult for all industries, including government, to transition from pre and post March 2020 in that environment. But in Germany, the cultural industry in particular was very widely affected by the necessary governmental restrictions that had to be taken in order to contain the pandemic. So in order to compensate, that had a massive impact on the arts and cultural nonprofits. And so Germany decided that short-term aid would become necessary. And so delivering this was a challenge from a program and service delivery standpoint because of the pandemic, which itself disrupted all the processes of government. So they wanted to build an application to be able to take a software application in order to be able to process those cultural aid applications and then make the payments. And what's really cool from an agility standpoint is they had a 3-week go live of this new platform. They were able to automatically evaluate 160,000 documents and classify them with AI services available in our business technology platform. and they were able to take 47,000 applications and distribute 2.5 billion in aid. So I think back to Ulrike's example, right, of the customer experience in government, taking the application, making the payment. This was a live example of that. And so, and again, a lot of that was based on SAP's business technology platform services. And speaking of the BTP, as we just saw with the 3 examples that are available, our BTP, or our business technology platform, we like our acronyms. But our BTP enables government innovation beyond the core, because in a single platform, we have data management capabilities, analytics, development platform capabilities, and we also have AI and RPA services available as well. And what's even cooler for people like Ulrike and I that work all our time in the public sector is we have pre-built and packaged public sector content available in our business technology platform as well. And you can see some of that listed on the right side of this slide. What this content allows for is our customers to very quickly deploy these technology services in a government-specific process and requirement context, really increasing their agility and their time to value. And we also have about, yeah. Go ahead.
Given that they've come from a very custom mindset, you're trying to move them more into a packaged, standardized stance. When you go to them with BTP, do they go, "Oh my God, you're taking me back to the past, a lot of custom development"? Do they see any resistance?
No, not as much as we used to. I see government moving more towards a cloud and an agile mindset. And I think the pandemic taught a lot of our government clients how, if they had the technology tools and the processes in place before the pandemic, they could more easily manage the disruption that came their way. But one other thing I'll say about this content, Vinnie, in answer to your question, is the BTP itself is a series. It's a toolbox, right? It's kind of like it's a bunch of Legos, right? But every Lego set comes with instructions for how to build something with those Legos, but you can build other things with the Legos too. And what this content does for industry is it gives them some instructions on how they can configure, and gives them a quick start for how they can configure the technology tools or the technology Legos in an industry specific context. It doesn't mean they can't use the Legos for something else, or they can't tear down what they built and rebuild something else, but it does give them a quicker start.
The cloud ERP, you have unique, like federal cloud, and you have unique clouds, right? I mean, the infrastructure. Where is the cloud ERP run?
So the question about government clouds, yes, there are different clouds that we offer for government. They would not run on a specific infrastructure. We are not really in the infrastructure business, but we have special operations. So the whole setup is specific. They are certified. They run on specific hyperscaler environments like Amazon GovCloud, for example. And we also have special operations teams that fulfill requirements like security screening or certain nationality. So for example, in the US, we have the NS2 cloud, which is on US soil, run by US personnel in a special secured environment that is FedRAMP certified and fulfills all requirements that our customers in the government would need.
And then, Vinnie, beyond just our business technology platform, we also have our core ERP content that we offer to the market, including specific content for our public sector customers in our core. And this content is across the government value chain that we've already talked about, enabling the digitization and then further innovation of critical government processes like budgeting, grants management, accounting, and tax and social services management. And then, of course, we also support government-specific needs in areas like procurement, asset management, and human capital management as well. These applications are all natively integrated, and they enable new delivery models based on data exchange and flow across that government value chain. And to wrap this all up and tie it all together, I will pass it back to my colleague, Ulrike.
So we will continue our investments in our applications, also for public sector, as we have done in the past. But we see really the true value coming together with the combination of our applications, third-party applications, and the platform. As Chris has also already mentioned, the platform is also our integration layer between these different worlds and also the data management layer. And this actually defines our North Star. So how can we help governments to become intelligent? How can they become resilient against those changes and new disruptions? And how can they operate in a most sustainable way? And what we've drawn here is a summary of what we have said. So government sits on a massive amount of data. They collect data and get data from all different sources. Very often this data is still isolated and not shared. We encourage government to come together in a network with the different government agencies, but also with private, in private, public-private partnerships, so with private entities and agencies. And have this common source of knowledge managed on the government cloud platform, and use the government cloud platform as well to integrate with third-party specialized applications for their core processes. If you do that, you can have data-driven policies. So base your policy making on much better information, and also get your operations internally and also when servicing citizens or businesses much more intelligent and agile. Every single agency would be connected to that network and is then able to anticipate what is coming upon them, different needs also, make even proposals to their stakeholders on how to react or what to service, what to offer as a service. They can automate much better their processes end to end, and they empower their workforce to make decisions well-informed and take the courage instead of simply reacting. That is our North Star, our commitment, that drives our investment decisions as well.
This has got to be the most rapid implementation I've seen in the government setting. Great
yeah, job. We are there. We are really good.
Thank you so much. You know, I mean, I think you covered global aspects too. So I mean, you covered a lot of ground. You covered the cloud, you covered BTP, you covered, you know, citizen-facing applications. So thank you. This is a very good 20-minute summary.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Vinnie.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ulrike.
Thank you, Vinnie.
Come back in a few months and drill down into a more specific country or a specific area. Come back with a bigger case study. The door's open. Decide when you want to present, and I'll host you again. Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you very much. Yeah.